I'm gonna share my screen, prepare.
They start off with two or three applications, 2 or 3 essays, and just kind of go from there. It allows you to edit those essays as you progress in doing different scholarships. A copy of your unofficial transcript. Many students do not have this, and this is just an unofficial transcript. They should know how to get into whatever school that they go to portal, how to download that, and also how to then save that into their Google Drive. Copies of at least 3 recommendation letters and the emails of those recommenders. We talked last week about that. Recommendation letters are very important because most scholarship applications cannot be completed or submitted without them. The ACT score report, usually you can get that straight off the ACT site, and a copy of their parents' and students' income tax for the last year. So for a student graduating this year, they would actually need the 2021 income taxes to do that. So moving right along, I'm going to use the 2022 Isaac Bruce Foundation Scholarship as an example for tonight. I kind of decided to use one that I did not highlight. That way that gives you information on one. So the first thing when you're looking at a scholarship application, the very first thing that you need to do is figure out what the requirements are, because you don't want to begin to work on a scholarship application and get 3/4 of the way through that application and find out that you don't qualify. So first and foremost, I would say use that spreadsheet that I showed you the last time. Write those scholarships on that sheet, use it as a database, and also write down the requirements at that time. So for this particular scholarship, you must be a college-bound high school student from the St. Louis area. You must have a cumulative GPA of at least a 2.0 out of a 4.0 scale. Many kids sometimes don't even know what we mean by cumulative. So I always try to tell them, that's from your freshman year through your senior year. And all the information must be postmarked by April the 1st and mailed to the address that I have listed below. The second thing is, with this particular application, the student has to complete, they're calling the application a nomination form. It's really just a short version of the application. This is really a simple scholarship application to complete. I really like it, though. I believe it's $5,000, and I'm almost positive it's renewable. And if you look at the Isaac Bruce Foundation, you'll see that they also have a couple of other scholarships as well. So if you look, this is just a form that we fill out. So a few things that I wanted to note on this form, just about detail, making sure that you complete the application in the manner in which the committee has asked you to, because I cannot begin to tell you how important that is. Because if you do an application and you leave out some information or you don't follow the directions, a lot of times those applications will be disqualified. So the first thing I wanted to make note of, because I got this directly out the application, it says student name. But then if you see at the back of where it has student name, it has last, first, middle. So again, this is where we have to pay attention to detail and make sure that we are reading the information before we just begin to write our name. Because what you'll find is that if you don't make that distinction, a lot of students will probably put their first, middle, and last name. And on this application, they want last, first, middle. Street address, tell students whenever you put the street address, make sure you put the city, state, zip. And some of this stuff may sound elementary, but to be honest with you, from the scholarship applications that I have seen, when it comes to our students, it's not. So when you're just giving them instruction, I would rather go over everything than them to miss something after doing 3/4 of the work. Date of birth, student phone number. I always tell students, whenever you put your phone number, remember there is an area code that goes with that. Email address, I tell them if you don't have a professional sounding email, it's a really good idea to create you a new email that you're just going to use throughout your college years. Name of high school, the principal, guidance counselor. The reason that's so important is when it comes to scholarship applications, probably 99.9% of them are going to ask for a recommendation letter from your counselor. And the reason that you should really start that really, really early is just say, let's use River Gardens, for example. Let's say you have one counselor in the school and you have 150 students. That one counselor, if 50% of those students are really working on scholarship application and ask that one counselor for a letter of recommendation, we're talking about 75 letter recommendations right there. So that's why I think it's a really good idea to even ask your junior year for your counselor to work on your recommendation letter, and make sure that when you do that, that you give them the information they need to make sure that the application is, the recommendation is really a good recommendation. The next thing you do is you look and say, okay, what else am I going to need to complete this application? Most applications are going to have some supplemental information that you have to attach. I think the easiest way to do it is to make you a list and go down your list, adding that information, even to the point where when you put the application together, you put it together in the sequence that is listed on the application. When those scholarship committees open those applications, if it's neat, if it's in order, if it's all labeled, you just get so many points for that. If they have to look through, a bunch of sheets of paper to find what they've asked you for, in most cases, they really don't want to do that. So it creates a problem. So the very first thing is the nomination form. That's the form that we just looked at. The second thing this is asking for is a typewritten personal statement, 500 words or less, on how the Isaac Bruce Foundation Scholarship will assist you in fulfilling your career goals, my college goals. Now, if you notice, it says on here, please reference your participation in the following areas: extracurricular activity and or evidence of community service. So you can look at that in a bunch of different ways. I have a lot of different sample essays that would do that in either case. But the biggest thing I want students to remember is when somebody asks you personal essay, it's almost like that you want a story. You need to tell a story, who you are. 17, 18 years on this earth, there's a story of why you are where you are at this moment and why you want to pursue a college education. So that would be the next thing. The next thing is complete a biographical summary. That would be your resume or a paragraph about yourself. So look at it like this. If you've already done that resume and you started working on that resume early and you just kept adding all your activities, your community service, your extracurricular activities, you literally would have this part of the application completed because you would already have that done and in your Google Drive. Personal recommendation may come from a high school counselor, teacher, employee, supervisor, religious leader, youth leader, etc. Let's say this is an application for seniors in high school, but because I wanted to get a head start, I started on those recommendation letters in my junior year. So again, that's another piece of the application that you've already had completed. And last would be literally just a letter showing that you have been accepted into an accredited college or vocational school. Another thing I try to tell those students, because I do work with students on career readiness as well, I understand that all students are not looking to go to college in that professional sense, that traditional college. So what I tell them is that still complete your financial aid application, still look at scholarships. A lot of scholarships today will be awarded even if you're going to do some kind of vocational training or some kind of career program. Now I just want to do samples, because I know a lot of times what we do with students is we say, you need to have this, you need to have this, you need to have this. Once you've created your list, then the task becomes, what does that list look like? What does that list really mean? Because it's one thing to give you a list of things to do. It's another thing to show you what those things should look like. So on the board there, I have your resume. So whenever you're doing your resume, this is just a sample resume that I use with all my students, but whenever you're doing your resume, make sure that you have those honors and awards, extracurricular activity, community service, and leadership roles and organizational memberships. The reason organizational membership, for example, is so important is because a lot of scholarships offer scholarships based on you participating in their program throughout your high school years. Good example of that would be like the NAACP chapter in St. Louis or the Deltas, having those things on your resume and then you do a Delta application, it's really going to look good to that scholarship committee that is normally compiled of those people who are dealing with that organization. So they're going to see that you have been active in their organization, and I think you get points for that. So you're going to attach your one-page resume, or if you prefer that the application did give you an option, if you want to write a paragraph that explains who you are and kind of talks about your involvement in a lot of these things throughout your high school year, that's actually good. You can use that as an option as well. Most scholarships, however, are going to ask you specifics. List your extracurricular activity, list your community service. How many hours of community service do you have? They're going to ask you, what did you do during that community service? So what did you actually do for that organization that you volunteered for? So I just picked one of the essays, and I'm trying to move this thing around so I have enough space, that I usually, what happens is from all the schools that I attend, their students that work really hard and they work on the essay. Whenever a student do an essay and they receive money for the essay, I usually use those as samples for the student. I don't know if I had the whole essay on here, but I'm just going to read it, and it might seem like it's a waste of time for you guys. But again, if students see what it's supposed to look like, a lot of times it really helps them with getting started. I would say if there was one reason that most students will not get a scholarship that they apply to, it would be the essay. The writing skills and how you put your feelings down, how vulnerable you become on that paper is just so important. Because if you think about it, everybody has to have a certain GPA. Everybody has to possibly have, if it requires an ACT score, everybody has to show a resume. The one thing that sets you aside from any other student is going to be your essay. So I'm going to read this one. It says, my to be. Being the first in my family to even pursue a college education has been a driving force in my life. One day early in high school, when we began to study the writings of William Shakespeare, my metamorphosis began. I read the phrase, to be or not to be, that is the question. And it stuck in my mind as though it was a component of my brain since birth. I had discovered my purpose and it overwhelmed me. I needed and wanted more. What was needed to invoke the to be aspect that Shakespeare described, at least for me, was a determination and a commitment to a college education. It had proclaimed it to be. It should be, I had proclaimed it to be. When really examining the phrase, I discovered that was my question. Would I do what was necessary to pursue a degree in music business, or would I accept the fact that my mom could not afford it as my other family members had done? If it was to be, it would be because of the hard work and tenacity I engulfed into it. I could not continue to feel that it was my destiny to be financially unable to attend college. No longer would college be that impossible feat. So I'm just going to stop right there for a second because I kind of want to ad lib a little bit on the essay piece. Now, all the students on here, the thing I want you to remember is that you have to write, rewrite, rewrite, rewrite. That's how your essay is going to get better. The time and the energy that you put into writing your essay is going to show up on the paper. If I am on a scholarship committee and I read your first paragraph, if I am not interested or curious and want to read more, I will not, because I am going to be looking at the stack of applications that I have and trying to determine who I'm going to get the 5 scholarships that I'm offering out. So that's why I really think that, the essay is important. For parents who are on here, I do understand the concept of our students need to be accountable. But I do believe that holding them accountable starts so early in life. Senior year, in my opinion, is not the year that it's like, oh, I'm just going to hold you accountable. And if you don't do it, it's just on you. If you don't finish this process, that's going to be on you, because believe it or not, that is not just going to be on them, that's going to be on you too, because they're not going to have somewhere to live. They're not going to be able to provide the financial resources that they need to live. So therefore, they are going to be in your homes. So I think the senior year is the year, I use a phrase, and it's called all hands on deck. That's what senior year is, because on one extent, we do want to hold them accountable. And I think that the way that you do that is not by just saying you have to get this done. If you don't get it done, it's going to be on you. I think you hold them accountable by putting some strategies into place, maybe making a schedule out their week so that they know what days are going to be their college days, what days they are going to have to work on essays, college application, their resume, and have a consequence if that doesn't happen. And I know a lot of times we say, well, we can't get them to do this and we can't get them to do that. But I think that especially if you are working with students who are not seniors now, just kind of start that process early on. In all of my classes, I have a one for all and all for one concept. And I tell the students the very first day that I meet them, everybody will complete every task. And if that's too much for you, let me know now, and I will make whatever concessions I need to make to remove you from the class, because this is a process that we all have to complete. And I think one of the things is the students are doing double work, and that's the reason that they do need assistance. I know that the senior counselor is on this in this workshop, and I'm sure she probably will attest to that and tell you the same thing as far as, yes, do our students get senioritis? Of course they do. Do they get where the only thing that they want to do is walk across the stage and be done with high school? Of course they do. But a lot of them do not even imagine the possibilities. They say, I'm sick of school, so they're just ready to graduate. But I think the exposure to understanding how different high school and college is, or the value of even being on a college campus and meeting new people and figuring out who you are, I mean, that's when your adulthood basically begins. So I think that it's really, really important that we share some of our stories with them and let them know that this is just not another level from middle school to high school to then college, and you know, and kind of get them excited about the process. And I think if they are getting help with all the overwhelming things that have to be done, they are more likely to buy into the process. One of the things I say is, even if a student does not want to go to college, my goal with every student is, let's just prepare. If we prepare and it comes to April, May, and you've made up your mind, you just want to get a job, or you want to do a training program and sit, that's fine. You haven't spent that much time to plan. But what happens if in April or May come and all your friends are talking about where they're going, and you decide, maybe I do want to go to college? Immediately you're gonna throw that idea out if you haven't planned, because it's going, if you thought it was overwhelming in the beginning of your senior year, you're definitely gonna think it's impossible, you know, by the end of your senior year. So just have them plan. So anyway, this goes on and on and on, and then it says, earning a college degree in music is my to-be. And the assistant that the Isaac Bruce Foundation Scholarship, my dreams of pursuing a college education and further exploring my passion in music can be accomplished. So that's just a sample essay. Then you go to the recommendation letter. Not going to read the recommendation letter. I'm just going to say the recommendation letter should come from someone who knows you as best as they can. If you're going to do, that's the reason it's so important to build those relationships up during your high school years. If you walk in your counselor's office in the senior year and she doesn't even know who you are, and you ask her for a recommendation letter, yes, she's going to write you one, but the letter is going to read like a person who barely knows who you are. So I always say, attach that resume to your request. I say, do a form, request a recommendation letter, tell them what you want it for, give them a date of when you need it. I always give them 2 to 3 weeks to complete it. And just, even if that means setting an appointment up with them and talking to them for 5 minutes just about your dreams, your aspirations, some of the things that you have done throughout your high school year, I think that's going to make a big difference when they write. Because when you know a student you can really speak to leadership, those type of things. So, wait a minute. So that would be the, let me go back. So that would be the recommendation letter. Next thing they said, a college acceptance letter. These are just things, all the things that you would attach to this scholarship application. And remember what I said the last class, it may seem overwhelming, it may seem like a lot of information, but each scholarship application generally asks the same information. So once you get these things into your Google Drive, you're just really going to be duplicated. It's almost like you're making a packet and just multiplying that packet over and over again for each of the scholarship applications that you do. Unofficial transcript. It may surprise you guys how many students do not know their cumulative GPA, do not know the difference in an unofficial and an official transcript. Things like that, when they see it on the application, if they're unsure, a lot of times that also is a deterrent from them even completing the application. So that's why I think it's so important. You know, one of the things that we do is go into these schools early and really, really try to expose kids to all these little things that sometimes you think, well, they should know that, but they don't. So, and I just can't begin to tell you how many times I have to tell a student the difference in an unofficial and official transcript. So that would be put in a sealed envelope. Some scholarships will have you order it from the school, and it will be mailed directly from the school to the scholarship organization, which means that when you order the transcript, you need to know who the organization is, their address, is there a contact person that they need to put on there, and a date that it has to arrive there. Remember, once all these things are done and you're finished with the application, you finish completing it, you get your large envelope and you put these things in there based on when they're mentioned on the application. And then you just put them in there really, really neat. You address the envelope and you're done. So with that being said, I am going to stop the share and I'm just gonna kind of open it up because I just wanted you guys to have that experience. Some people might think, well, it wasn't necessary, but I think just knowing what it's supposed to look like is very, very important. Are there any comments or questions?
At the high school level, our scholars have something called a brag sheet. The brag sheet is what you use in order to get your letters of recommendation from your counselor. A lot of times what you want to do is you want to make sure you know your counselor, not just hand them a brag sheet with all of your information on there. Getting to know your counselors throughout the years is very important. So that those letters of recommendation can be very detailed and specific to you, as well as the information that you add on your brag sheet.
Yeah, and I like to piggyback off of that. I've actually been doing the college plan in the Parkway School District with the DSA kids for the last 15 years. When I first started, they had this brag sheet. None of the students would complete this brag sheet. You know, it was just, even completing the brag sheet was so overwhelming for them. So again, what I would tell the parents and the students on here, go to the concept freshman year and say, I understand senior year, we're going to have to complete a brag sheet so that you can kind of work on, because I know sometimes the brag sheet may have on there your favorite book, you know, why did you like that book? So a lot of times it in itself can be overwhelming. And I don't know a lot about how I was in Riverview with Gear Up years ago with Dr. Beck with them for 6 years. But since then, I don't know a lot about how it's working with their high school students. But what my experience is that goes across the board almost is a lot of times there are really a lot of good policies and procedures put into place. But unfortunately, students just continue to walk right past, you know what I mean, their policy or procedure as far as getting it done. So parents, I would say it might not be a bad idea. Reach out to the counselor the freshman year, get a copy of the brag sheet, sit down with your student so that they can kind of work backwards. That if you know what your expectation is in your senior year, If you knew that in your freshman year, just see how much information you can get done and how less stressful it would be once you become a senior.
Yeah, I agree with you, Miss Peggy. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I am Miss Graham, the senior counselor, and I do so agree with you, at least getting the brag sheet out to the students a little bit earlier so they can kind of see what the questions are and what's asked, because then over their 4 years of high school, that brag sheet is going to change, because then they'll begin to get more experience and have more things to add to their brag sheet, and then even join clubs because they know that this is what the scholarship committees are going to be looking for, and the admission reps are going to be looking for. So one of the things that I do love about the high school, and I tell you as a senior counselor, it is very, very, very timing, because it's one of me, it's 1,000 of them. And so getting to everybody. So we have college and career classes. So this is a teacher that does nothing but work with the students on the college part and on the career part. They research, they see college professors' syllabus, they're exposed to college, they learn how to write a personal statement. And as you said in that personal statement, that first sentence should grab the reader's attention. When I read your first sentence, do I want to continue to read? So we give the students an outline. We tell them how to transition from one paragraph to another, keeping it organized. We tell them it's this conversation on paper is simply that. It's a organized conversation on paper. And so you want to recheck, reproof. We even tell the students now, and some of my seniors are on here, you have an English teacher, communication, or a teacher, have someone to proofread your work. It has to be mailable. And so our JAG teacher, our college and career teacher, our college advisor, myself, we work with we want to touch every single senior, because you can't mail anything out of because our school pays for the mailing. When you give me your envelope, it must have type labels on it. It must have the correct information on that label to the admissions office, to the Office of Financial Aid, and then your information. And so everything must be mailable. So I like the team that we have in place, because it takes a team. And to let these students know they have a booklet, you have a checkoff, you have your resume, you know how to get in and format that resume. And like you show them a resume of character and what you're doing. And so these resources are there. Even being on here with you, I told all my seniors and their parents to join us tonight so you can get this information. But nonetheless, I will send both of these videos out to them. So, so they can have more resources. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing with our students that are here, and the ones that are not, they will get this information as well.
Thank you.
Another class that we have to offer is called Avid. And our Avid programs actually start within our middle schools. So it is a college prep program. It begins in the middle school and it runs all throughout high school. So that is another avenue to take, starting in middle school.
We have some questions in the chat.
Okay, that sounds good.
It said, if you haven't completed your ACT due to COVID in the past, is that bad, and while being a senior?
Okay, I'm going to, actually what happened was, because of COVID, over 1,700 schools has made an ACT score for admissions optional. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that they will take your application with your transcript, and you don't necessarily have to have an ACT score. So what I tell students is, it's two ways to look at it. Very first thing you do is, if the school tells you that the ACT is optional, I would say in most cases, I tell students, don't turn in your ACT score. And the reason that I tell students that is that I'm looking at the national average of score. I'm looking at what the scores usually are. So normally I tell students initially, go the optional route. Now let's say you take the ACT and you get a really good score, then yes, order your ACT score and have that ACT score go to the school. I've had students in the last year, since last year and this year, get 4 rides to colleges and universities. And these are students that I have been working with that I know would not have got a full ride if their ACT score would have been on their documentation. So I would say this year, get the applications done, use the optional route. If you go to Fair Test, and we got a few minutes, let me see if I can find it real quick. Because if you go to Fair Test, it will give you a list of all the schools that go optional. See, I'm just gonna try to see how fast I can find it. If not, I'll skip it.
And just while you're looking, Miss Peggy, even with the ACT, like a lot of my students are going out to the community college, there's the AccuPlacer. They'll test them when they get there, or they'll take their ACT scores and compare them to their AccuPlacer and place those students into courses that are going to be beneficial to them. Like if you didn't do good on the math, there is no point of putting you in a higher level math. Make sure you get what you need before you go into a higher place. And that's the reason for testing, because they want to make sure they're putting you in the correct courses so they don't set you up for failure. So go ahead.
Yeah, and another thing to piggyback off of that with those students who are doing these career programs, because I also do a lot of workforce development with MOCAN, and they have like a career program for students straight out of high school, but a lot of these programs want these kids to take that work keys. And it's a new one out there. I can't even think of the name of it, but here's the thing. Most kids don't pass it. You have to get a 3 or a 4. Most kids don't get a 3 or 4. So even with that, I think that the most important thing is how, you have to plan either way it goes. I mean, the ACT score national is really, really low. But another thing is that, I remember when my students were in middle school, I had them take the ACT. I was playing around on ACT. This is honestly, as a parent, I was playing around on ACT.org and realized that students could take the test starting in 7th grade. And I said to myself, why? They haven't taken geometry, they haven't taken algebra. I said, you know what? I'm just going to expose them. And once I discovered that, I actually had my kids I paid, I think it was about $40 back then, for them to take the ACT either every year or every other year. And what happened is once it counted, they weren't nervous anymore. They had been exposed to the test. They actually got to use the test as a study technique. But anyway, I did find the FAIR test. So this is the site, it's called fairtest.org, and all you do is click and it's gonna say optional schools. And when you go down, there are the schools, all the schools from the state that have optional ACT. So with all that being said, all you have to do is right now, get all your information together, find you 2 or 3 schools, get your applications done, order your official transcripts to go to them. If you're going to do HBCUs, I would suggest that you do the HBCU Common App. If you go onto their site, it'll show you a list of the schools that one application you can go for. I will tell you this though, if you get free or reduced lunch, you do get the waiver. However, with the HBC Common App, it's a $20 fee. It is not waived. However, you can apply for like a couple of hundred, well, maybe not that many, maybe 100 HBCU colleges all at once. So what is that? That's going to be 1 game, 1 lunch, it's really about prioritizing. Remember, that it's all an investment in yourself. So I would say to the student that asks, get to applying, go and look at that list. If your schools are on there, make it a commitment. It snowed today, it's going to snow tonight. Before you walk back into review, go ahead and have your applications done. So all you need to do is call Ms. Graham and order your transcripts. Start today, and I promise you, it'll go by fast. And once you get that first acceptance letter, it'll motivate you to keep moving and keep trying to find the financial resources that you need. Was it another question, Ms. Nelson?
One of the elementary students asked, I guess it's called the Bragg test. Is that offered for elementary and middle school students? Not test, form.
Okay, what I would tell you to do for 3 years, I was in Moline when Principal Thompson was there, and we had a program called College is Elementary. So what I would say for you to do, sweetheart, is just get you a book like this. You know, these little notebooks, they like 25 cents. You get them like when school year starts. Get you a notebook, and every time you do something that's great, maybe you volunteer, maybe you help somebody, open your notebook and write it down. Every time you get your report card, open the notebook and write down your grades in your report card. And if you get a C, then you say, gotta make that a B or A next time. And before you know it, you'll have a notebook full of all your successes. And that's what I call building a college-going culture in the home, not school, in the home. So I love that you asked that question.
One thing that I do want to add is the next ACT is April 2nd. You can sign up now until February 28th. You can sign up with Mr. Morrison in Building 9.
Well, actually, they can.
And I'm gonna piggyback off of that because.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Peggy. No, I was just going to say that Mr. Morrison.
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Morrison, our college advisor, is out right now. So scholars know that they can sign up with Mrs. Falls, who is our college and career, and they can sign up with me. Also, the students have the dates and everything, so they know they can go in. And we also, the only thing that they need from us is a waiver, because Riverview will pay for 2 tests during their high school journey. And they get that waiver, and they do understand if they do not come, that means that you have used that waiver. So it's very important that they know, and well, they do know that it's very important that you show up. If you don't, you have lost your waiver.
Yeah. And one other thing to piggyback off, we're talking about the ACT. I know we got way off of scholarships, but the other thing that piggyback off of that would be that even though I gave you a list of schools that says the ACT is optional, that allows you to go ahead on and do your application. I would still strongly suggest, however, that you sign up and take that ACT in April, even if it doesn't go on your transcript and it doesn't have anything to do with you being accepted. Because what's going to happen is, even if you go to a community college and you get your associate's degree, soon as you apply for that 4-year university, they're going to look for an ACT score. If you did not have an ACT score in high school, they're going to require that you take the ACT. So I just think it's a good idea to plan and just go. I think every senior, regardless of what's optional or not, should have an ACT score. Any more questions, comments, parents? I know you're probably stressed if you're a parent on here, just like the students are stressed, because it's a stressful year.
Ms. Peggy, is there anything you can get put together that we could possibly put in our Riverview Gardens newsletter that goes out to parents relative to scholarships, just any information that we can pass on to Mr. Sistrunk to put in our newsletter? We send out a newsletter every month through the district. I'm not sure if the high school does or not specifically, but I know we do it as a district. So if you can put together some information, we can get that in our newsletter.
Sure, I can give you, maybe I'll give you some scholarship highlight.
Yep.
I got it.
You know, like highlight a few scholarships, because it is the actual process.
Okay.
It literally, for my schools, I do scholarship highlight nights. So we do Zooms and work through one scholarship. Because I mean, I'm sure it's just a struggle to get them to do it. So it's just always a good idea if you have little time or space for them to do it in. It always usually works really well. So yeah, I'll see what I can come up with and I'll give it to Ms. Nelson.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question.
Go right ahead.
Do I need to talk to Ms. White about anything?
I would encourage you to talk to Mr. O.
Mr. O, okay.
Mr. O.
Well, he wasn't there on the last day of school. He wasn't there. I don't know what's wrong.
Okay, tell me your first name and your last name, and I'll make sure Mr. O gets in contact with you. I didn't hear you.
I didn't hear you, baby. Say it again.
Just Sonia Davis.
All right, we'll get you taken care of, Ms. Davis.
Okay.
So sweet. So sweet.
Thank you for joining, Miss Davis, the elementary school.
Yes.
Yes,
That's
honey.
our first female president. Hey.
Oh, the college is elementary. That's what I always say.
I'm
College is
right,
elementary.
Miss Moline.
Did she, Ms. Davis, did you say you rock at Moline?
Yes.
Awesome, baby. Keep rocking at Moline.
Well, okay. If you all don't have, go ahead. If you don't have any more questions or comments, I just want to say thank you, Ms. Nelson. I know we've been talking about doing this scholarship workshop for quite some time. So, I mean, I'm glad to see a lot of people on here and the interest, and hopefully you seniors that are on here, get off of here tonight, sit down and make a things to do list for tomorrow. So while it's snowing, you can be productive, getting it done.
Absolutely. Can you say that again, please?
Yes,
Thank
get it.
you again, Ms.
done.
Becky. This information is so needed. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, district leaders, for attending. I do want to let the parents know that we do have a YouTube page, a district YouTube page. So this will be uploaded on the district YouTube page. If you wanted to share the link or send that information out, the first session is already on. And then after this Zoom, I'll send it to Ishmael and he can upload that information to share. Somebody had a hand up.
Ms. Higgins asked me a question, I think by myself. I'm going to send you my contact information. Ms. Higgins.
Okay. So if you did not get a chance to fill out the sign-in sheet, please do that. And then if you didn't get a chance to, I'm not sure if the poll is still available. If you didn't get a chance to do the poll, please do that.
And shout out to the Riverview Gardens alumni, Miss Payne. I see a class of 94.
Yes, I'm slow coming off chat. Yes, graduate of 94.
Well, congratulations and thanks for joining us and coming back.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Dr. Patton, did you want to say anything, or Deidre, did anybody want to say anything?
I just want to thank Miss Peggy for coming on and supporting us. I think your information over the last couple of sessions have been great, good information that our students will be able to utilize and to especially get scholarships and things like that. So I appreciate your time and your efforts in supporting us. And then to all the families that came on, thank you, because we've got to make sure our babies are graduating, going on to college or trade schools or whatever it is they want to do so that they can be successful. And to the young Miss Davis who rocks at Moline, thank you for coming on, young Miss Davis.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Takes a village. Love it, love it, love it. And last, I put my contact information out for everybody. Ms. Higgins, make sure you give me a call though, and I'll give you some resources.
Okay. Any last questions? Ms. Deidre, did you wanted to say? I thought you had.
Yeah, I sent you a message for for your meetings.
Okay, so we have our PAC meeting next Monday, our Parent Advisory Council meeting. If everybody that attended tonight can join me next Monday, they're every first Monday of the month. So be looking out for that information with the Zoom link information. If we don't have any other questions, we'll end it here. Thank you, everybody, again for attending. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.